Hey everyone, welcome back. And if you're a first-time viewer, my name is Travis, the herpetology curator here at the museum. And thank you for tuning in to our turtle feeding. And I thought I'd try something a little different, so we'll kind of see how this goes. You can kind of see I've made this kind of amalgamation of a little enrichment device. So with their normal colored greens that we give them during this feeding, and just as a way to kind of showcase some of the ways that we try to problem solve here. A lot of times we have to think outside the box or think of an entirely new box altogether. And this is just a way to give them something different and a sort of puzzle or challenge, something new in their environment that they've never seen before, which is of course very stimulating for them and gets them to engage with something that they would otherwise kind of be the same old from day to day. So we'll give it a try, see how it goes, and we'll start because these guys are obviously very excited to get started. So here you go, guys. Yeah, you go. Let's see if we can get them to interact with it. They seem ready to go. And today, like I said, I'm feeding colored greens for them, and they've got to kind of pick at it and graze on it as they will. The fish are obviously investigating it quite a bit, and that's fine. Again, this is a little bit of everything for everybody in here, but it gives our turtles a chance to just try out something new and to break up that sort of day-to-day routine. And if you've tuned in before, I talked a little bit about these guys and that these are the common pond sliders that we have here in freshwater areas of Virginia. And they include species like the yellow-bellied slider that you see in view right now, the eastern river cooter, the northern red-bellied cooter. And I think we have some questions already.
Yeah, well, it's been the same question twice, but what are their names, Travis?
What are their names? Well, I do have a couple of names for them. I'll see if I can pick one out. The smaller male, which I don't quite see him. Oh, he's over here. I call him Freddy, just as a nickname. And again, I'd like to reiterate that we don't try to give these guys pet names, and sometimes it's actually really hard to think of a clever name that sticks with them. So a lot of times we just kind of throw out names. Each of the keepers kind of have their own thing, and we see what sticks. Yeah, we have another question.
Yes, Eli, age 7, and Nasir, age 3, want to know, what do they eat in their natural habitat?
So in their natural habitat, of course they don't have access to a large chain grocery store or anything like that, so they can't just go to the produce aisle and pick up some collard greens on their own. So instead, they'll just graze on the vegetation that grows normally in the wild and in the water. So that includes algae, that includes a lot of those aquatic vegetation that you see growing in there, just all the stuff that grows near or in the water, they'll take advantage of. They'll just kind of graze on from day to day and get a healthy portion of their diet, and sometimes even get some other critters in there as well, because snails inhabit those types of vegetation. So they'll eat a lot of they'll eat some protein just as a nice happenstance.
Got a question from Courtney, age 8. How long do they live?
So these species right here will live anywhere from 40 to 60 years, and that's on average. So I always say, these turtles are amazing, and I absolutely adore turtles and seeing them in the wild, but they don't make for a great pet because there's such a long-term commitment. So if anybody has that idea, I would just encourage you to reconsider and especially think if it's something for your kids, they'll have to think about it when they get older and have kids of their own. So it's really important to think of that long-term commitment and a plan B and a plan C for what happens when they go off to college or go to the military, things like that.
Ella, age 4, would like to know if they have teeth.
So turtles do not have teeth, but some of the species have a beak, much like a bird's beak. Actually, turtles do have that sort of same apparatus or very similar apparatus that birds do, but some of their beaks will have this cusping or serration to it. So it would almost look like, and you might see in their mouths a little bit, you might see a couple of these turtles have that serration that look like teeth, but it's actually not. It's just a jagged, it's almost like a serrated blade or a serrated knife. It just makes it incredibly easy to bite off a piece of vegetation and cut it off so they can get nice mouth-sized portions really easily.
So Becca would like to know, are these turtles fully grown? And Ellie, age 5, didn't know if you might have already mentioned it, but how old are these turtles?
So I'll start off with the are they full grown? So yes, each of these turtles in here are old enough that they have reached roughly what would be considered their full adult size. And usually for these species, that means that their shell length reaches about a foot or so. And each of these guys is a different age because they came in at different times during the museum. They were originally someone's pet that they couldn't take care of anymore, and we just happened to have a vacancy at the time that we could take care of them. But that's not true all the time. These guys live so long, we've actually long since filled up our vacancies for being able to take care of turtles. So we're no longer taking in any at the moment. But yeah, each of these guys can live for a long time, and they're all different ages. But our oldest one, which is this girl right here, I actually just looked up her age the other day. She's over 40 years old right now. So I believe she's 48, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, well, Trace wants to know how many turtles are in here, and we had a really great question from Neoma, age 3, is do they eat pickles? I love pickles.
That's interesting. You know, if there was a pickle tossed out, they might eat it, but it is, you know, I should say cucumbers are fine for them to eat, but pickles are really, really salty, and salt is just not a normal part of their diet, especially not that much salt. So I'd hesitate to say that would be something good to feed them. And I'm sorry, what was the last question before that?
Sorry, I have to go back and find it. You already said, do they have teeth? How many turtles are in here?
Oh, how many turtles are in here? There are about 8 turtles in here at any time. Sometimes, you know, given any circumstance, if there's any aggression or anything, we might rotate them out. But they seem to all get along fairly well thus far. And as a rule, turtles tend to not really appreciate the company of other turtles. They see each other as threats or competition, so we try to keep the number in here to a minimum so that there's no prolonged aggression between these guys.
How many babies can they have?
That's an excellent question. So depends on the species, but you know, you're talking anywhere from what's called a clutch size, which is when they go up on land and dig a hole and lay eggs. It can be anywhere from, you know, as few as maybe 6 or so, or even less than 10, upwards to like 20 or 30. So they have a large range. It just depends on the time of the year and their success, and they can actually lay multiple times in a season.
How long can they stay underwater? From Jess Stillwell.
Oh, that's an awesome question. I like how you guys are thinking about these traits of these turtles. And to answer that is also a little bit complicated. It really depends on the time of year and the temperature outside. Their body functions slow down if it's colder outside, because these guys are cold-blooded. So what that means is, you know, we don't really think about the rate that we breathe or how much or how quickly we digest things, because our body temperatures are always at the same temperature year-round. Whereas these guys fluctuate. When it's cold outside, their body is cold. When it's warm outside and they can heat themselves up in the sun, their body heats up. And that means that their digestive processes speed up and their oxygen demand increases. So during the summer, during the warmer months, they can't stay underwater for as long. So you're maybe talking, you know, somewhere in the range of like 15 upwards of like half an hour or so. In the wintertime, they could stay under for hours, sometimes even days.
That's great. What is their favorite food treat from Jackson?
Their favorite food treat? Did I get that question right?
Or I'm sorry, favorite food as a treat.
As a treat, well, that's actually a really good segue into my last little dessert that I'm giving them. So I would say strawberries, by far. They are some of the brightest, sweetest smelling, most inviting treats that they can get. And like any treat, everything has to be in moderation. So, just too much of a good thing can be a bad thing. So I like to give these as a treat, just periodically, so that they don't fill up on it, because it is very sweet. It's also very acidic, and they wouldn't normally get as much fruit in their normal diet in the wild. So I'm going to toss a few in here, just to kind of let them go for it. I'm sure the fish are probably going to go for it first, before some of these guys get to it. But if they eat one or two, that's fantastic. And they'll of course pick it out because it is so bright, and and they really gravitate towards things like that, because that usually means they're very curious by nature. So they'll often seek out things that just look out of the ordinary in the hopes that maybe it's food or something like that.
Isaac, sorry. Isaac wants to know if you've ever been bitten. And then before that, we had, why are their stomachs yellow?
Ooh, that's...
And then to go along with that, Emilio wants to know why they have yellow on their faces.
Oh, very good question. So, let's see. Have I ever been bitten? At least by these guys, I would say no. I really try to avoid putting myself in any situation where I could possibly be bit by a turtle. And there's a really good reason for that, because turtles are just programmed to bite onto things and to not let go. So, even though it wouldn't cause any permanent harm or anything like that, it might not even break the skin, it would be wildly uncomfortable. It would be like somebody pinching you really, really, really hard and not letting go. And if you tried to pull away, sometimes they'll even clamp down harder. So it's all about knowing how to work with these guys and not putting my fingers in a place that they could easily go for it. So I'm always cognizant of that at all times, because I just don't want to be bitten by these guys, quite honestly. And so why do they have the coloration that they have is an excellent question. And a lot of that, it just depends on the species. So some species have more of a red tinge to their belly. Some do not have as many stripes on their face. Some have more stripes. It's all just depends on how that species has adapted over time, and what works for them. So a lot of that coloration acts as camouflage and a way for them to blend in. Because if you're down in the bottom of a pond and you're looking straight up, and all you see is that bright sun above you, anything that has a bright yellow belly or anything like that, probably would be hard to tell the difference between that and just how the light comes in through the water normally anyway. So it does help give them a little bit of an edge in that regard. And all those patterns and stripes and everything is how the light kind of plays in the water. If you were in that world, if you were looking at diving through the water and kind of looking at how the light dances around in there.
Melissa wants to know what kind of fish is swimming with the turtles, and I guess I can answer that. These are channel catfish that are kind of messing up the feeding here. We have a couple of albino or amelanistic catfish, like this big yellow guy here, and then some regular ones, but these are channel catfish among the other fish that live in here. And then Christy would like to know, what do they do in the winter?
So in the wintertime, these turtles, like a lot of other cold-blooded animals, will slow down, their body processes slow down, and they just hunker down and kind of wait it out. So, they'll sink to the bottom, they'll dig themselves into the muck and try to get a little bit insulated. And they'll allow their body temperature to get close to freezing, but not at freezing, because as long as the lake doesn't freeze completely through, which most lakes and ponds don't, they'll be perfectly fine, and they'll just wait it out until things start warming up again, and they can pile onto logs and things like that that you might see walking the trails around here. They tend to kind of stack up on each other and soak up the sun's rays.
Lomont wants to know, do the turtles fight if you try to take them... Whoop, I keep getting interrupted. If you try to take them out of the water, do they fight you?
Yeah, a little bit. Actually, quite a lot. They really, these guys are fairly used to us doing that because we take regular weights on them just to evaluate their health, and we give them, quick inspections. So even though they're used to that by us, they still give us a little bit of an attitude when they come out, and that's to be expected because when they get out of the water, they're just not nearly as at home as when they're in the water. They are much better able to escape danger, and they're much better able to blend in when they're in the water. On land, they're just so awkward. They're just not built for walking around and being on land, so they get stressed out when they get taken out of the water, unless they're doing that themselves. Like a female laying eggs, or just any of the turtles piling onto a log and basking in the sun. But you'll notice that if you get too close to them in the wild, they'll just kind of slide right into the water and go, kerplunk. And that's one of the reasons why we call a few of the species sliders, because they just slide right into the water as soon as they see danger.
Riley, age 10, wants to know, do they have ears?
That's an excellent question. So they do not have ear openings. It's completely closed off, which makes sense. They have to be a little bit of a submarine, so they have to seal themselves off so that water doesn't get in anywhere that would cause them trouble. But they do have an inner ear, and they can hear to a degree, and they can feel vibration, and it gives them an edge. So I guess in a way they would be able to hear maybe me talking, especially if I have sort of a low baritone or something with a lot of vibration to it. But they don't hear a lot of frequencies that we can. So, they wouldn't be able to understand what I'm trying to say or anything like that. But yeah, thank you all so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this little enrichment with these guys, and hope you learned something along the way as well. Oh yes, and if you have any further questions, please put them in the comments and we'll try to answer them when we can. And please tune in a little bit later today where we'll have somebody talking about bees. I believe that's Bo talking about the bees that we have here, our bee colony. So at 2:30, please tune in for that, and keep up to date on everything that we're doing, going on to our website, thevlm.org, and keeping up with all of our natural learning series that we're putting on, like TikTok and YouTube and Facebook and things like that. And during this time, we encourage everyone to please adopt a wild thing or donate to our emergency fund while we're closed. And it helps us a great deal to help take care of these animals. We really appreciate any donations you guys can provide. So again, thanks for joining, and hope to see you next time. Goodbye.